thinking about mixing and mastering when I'm first recording. You know, when the musicians are in there and everything I'm doing, I'm working towards those goals. And so I personally feel like I'm the best person under those circumstances to mix them. I don't master my own music because that's where I want somebody that a mastering engineer, all they do all day is take music and make it sound like a record, or make it, they do that. They have their objective. They haven't lived with those songs all that time. There's so many different mastering engineers because they have different styles too. They're recording artists too. And they have systems and set up how they like to master things and all of that. And that's why people like to work with different mastering engineers, because they make their record sound the way they want their record to sound. And, it's a choice. And, but I'm thinking about what I want them to do while I'm still recording before I
mixing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the mixes, I know what I want to do with the mixes, but I also allow a lot of dynamics and things so the mastering engineer will have something to work with. Because quite often when people mix these days, they use a lot of compression and they use a lot of manipulation and all of that. And there's not much that once that's in place, and the mastering engineer can't do a lot to it. It's there, and they can't brighten it up or, bring out this or that, because it's already been manipulated with compression and whatever. Now, what I learned working on these high-end records like Steely Dan and Asia and Gaucho and Breakfast in America and all that, from those engineers, what I learned was to get the sound out in the studio with the right mic in the right place. So there wasn't very much equalization or manipulation used when you recorded. For vocals, yes, you would add some limiting or compression, just because there's dynamics that would over modulate on the tape, and digitally as well. But you learn how to ride the microphone, and you learn, and hopefully the singer has mic technique, so if they know they're going to sing loud, they pull back, but some of them don't. So I'm mixing while I'm recording, instead of just setting a mic level and sitting back and, waiting for somebody. But what I learned was, to have as clean a recording as possible with as little EQ and as little compression and as little anything on it. So when you do mix, you have all of those frequencies and all of those dynamics and all of that, those colors of sound available to work with in the mixing process. And because how equalization works, if you want to brighten something up by boosting 10,000 cycles at frequency, by a certain amount, it takes away from something else down in the lower frequencies. And so whatever you add here, it takes away here, and then that's gone. And so the goal, and what makes it challenging and interesting, is to work at getting that best sound so you don't have to use any of that stuff. And that's why those records have the dynamics and have the sound quality and all of that, is because There's very little manipulation in the recording process, and it's left for the mixing process. And then in the mixing process, you can do all sorts of stuff. Unless you know there's a dedicated sound that it's not going to change, maybe a synthesizer sound, or you want to get a certain punch on the bass or something. But then that's done. You're not really going to change that again, or if you can't change it, you don't have as many options. I hope I'm not confusing you.
No, it's very understanding. My understanding also is that Donald and Walter were very shy, right? To begin with, right?
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
very extrovert, so
yeah. They
they
didn't
knew
have
exactly what that they wanted, right? They want to
right. There wasn't a lot of small talk. There,
really.
they're in the studio. You know, uh, they weren't. Their social skills were different than some artists, who are much more outgoing and all that. They just weren't those people, and
Yeah.
and it was kind of intimidating for me for the first couple months until I got to understand that, and uh, got to be friends with them individually, and um, they're wonderful guys. They were wonderful guys. So
Somehow your image got blurry for a minute. You move anything or no?
I don't know what happened.
Like five
Shall we
seconds.
stop for a second? You know what? I've
Yeah,
got this super duper camera.
recording. All right, so we're talking that that Donald and Walter were very shy, and it's not that they were shy with you; they were shy to begin with, right? And then you get to know them, are comfortable, and they no small talk, and but they knew
Yeah,
exactly what they wanted.
yeah. They yes, and it was very intimidating actually to people who weren't familiar with them, and until you got to know them, and then you could relax. And but if you were just being on a session for a short time, a lot of newbies came out of that room a little shaken, just because they were intimidating and they didn't know how they did. They like to think they knew how they did, on the recording. But can we pause for 1 second, please?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so people would be intimidated, and I certainly was for a while until I got to know them and understand them, if that's possible. But they were I got to be friends with both of them and individually, and yeah, they're good people, but different. Not like a lot of sessions where there was a lot of partying and a lot of frolicking around and whatever people did on recording sessions. A lot of drugs and whatever. Oops, I said that.
It's okay. We're dative, man. People party
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
No me, but I would drink a
yeah,
beer, but that's
yeah.
all I did.
Uh, there wasn't that, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, Roger drank a 6-pack of Coca-Cola a night, and
Wow.
he had the teeth to prove it. He had to get his teeth done. Yeah, and it only ate hamburgers pretty much, and uh, you know, just they were unique, and
No.
so their music is their music, and it's just like anybody else's music is their signature sound or whatever. But um, theirs was well and inspired. They were very big fans of um, Horace Silver and so many, Weather Report, and just all the old jazz, and they had so many influences. And for very respectful and of music that from before. And they're, of course, they're very smart, very educated, and very talented. And so they're kind of the best of the best, for
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
A weird question. I'm so used to I don't know. I am a morning person, so I wake up at 6 and I'm tired by 7, 8 p.m. Right. So, but musicians work night owls, right? So they do 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. How you manage? You need to be in the studio. So if you're a mom, a
I'm a
wife,
night owl.
how you manage? I mean, you will leave the house at 11 a.m. the house and then come back at 3 o'clock in the morning
It
again?
was, well,
How you they were long hours, right? You were not getting paid
it
per
was
hour.
long hours. Yeah. And um, there are ways to stay awake. But one of the things that I think has become clearer in as time went on is that if you worked an assistant longer than was, rational, they start making mistakes because they're overtired, and that loses the studio money. So they nowadays don't work you that long. But I had the longest session I had went from midnight on a Friday night till Monday morning. And it was very difficult. And there was time release speed that you'd take. And the studio gave it to you.
Yeah. But
how I got it.
how efficient can you be at 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning? Between 1
Or
and
the
5?
next day,
Yeah.
you've been there, over 24
I
hours,
don't,
36 hours.
yeah, I don't know.
It was awful. The first time I'd been there a week, and I had started on a session at around noon, and it went all night. And by 10 o'clock the next morning, my body is saying, I don't know about you, but I'm going to sleep. And I'd never been up all night. I'd never done an all-nighter. And I kind of started to panic because I had to go till 6 o'clock that night. And my body was going, no, we're nope.
Well,
And so fortunately, my mentor, Terry Becker, the girl engineer who was there 2 months before me, she said, don't worry about it. She called the Japanese restaurant across the street, ordered up tuna sashimi. They brought it over in a pure tuna protein. And I'd never had sashimi before. I hadn't had sushi or sashimi. So I'm eating this raw fish for the first time. And it gave me energy, and a good energy. Suddenly I was able to carry on and made it past 6 o'clock, but that wasn't fun. And it didn't happen all the time, depending on who you were working with, or what the situation was. Like Frank Zappa, he worked from 10 p.m. till 6 in the morning, and he didn't drive, so his wife would drop him off at the studio, and then he'd have to wait for her to pick him up. And so if he ended early, maybe she'd come early. But and back in those days, if you had to get your car worked on, or you had to go to the bank, or you had to do any of that, and you got out and your session ended at 5:30 or something, or 6, you had to hang around until the bank opened, or the mechanic opened, or whatever, so you could drop your car off and then go home and go to bed, or cash your paycheck, or deposit your check, or do whatever you had to do, and
yeah.
and then go home. And that was rough. But also, if you were working nights, Um, you know, sometimes you've worked a long day and you get off work and you just need to unwind somewhere. And, so you want to go do something and then unwind. Well, there was a 24-hour bowling alley. So we would like work till 4:30 or so and then go to the bowling alley and get there about 5 and bowl for a while, and then the bar opened at 6. So you could have a nightcap or cocktail and bowl till about 8 o'clock in the morning when the housewives, ladies bowling leagues had come in, and here'd be these like 3 girls or young assistants or and rock stars or rock and rollers, whoever went bowling too, and here we're drinking at 7:38 in the morning, and they would how dare you, look at you, shame on you girls, and how awful. And I said, we just got off work. We're going home and go to bed. This is your 8 o'clock at night. My 8 o'clock is your nighttime 8 o'clock. So yeah, so you'd bowl a few lanes and then have a couple drinks and go home.
Wow, no, I will go to bed, man.
Well,
I will go to bed, sleep for an hour, get coffee, brush my teeth, take a
yeah,
shower, man.
well, you do that, do all those things as well, but if there was if that record had to be delivered and they were behind schedule, and there was one record, there was one session that really was amazing. There's this artist named Debbie Boone who had a hit song called "You Light Up My Life" years ago that was at every wedding. You
Wedding,
light
right?
up
Oh,
my
man.
life. Yeah, everybody was sick of it. But so she was working on another record, and we started at noon. And I learned more from this session than about producing, just I think from any other session, because her producer, Brooks Arthur, gathered us together, the assistant and the engineer and I guess a runner or tech person, said, okay, I really need your help on this, because she has to sing 10 lead vocals, and then at 6 a.m. a limo's coming for her to take her on a 6-month world tour starting in Japan. So she's going to sing from noon until 6 in the morning and then go off to Japan. And he says, we have to make sure we get all the vocals and the takes. So I really need all of you to help me, because we have no spare time. So he engaged us all, and it wasn't like, I'm the big producer and, whatever. He used the team, and he said, okay, now stay to the side. I'm going to have the lights low so she can just look at me. But if you need anything or anything goes wrong, go in there or whatever. But, and she was such a pro. And, here I was going, I don't want to work with Debbie Boone, but, it's because of that song and all. I learned so much about a real professional. She wasn't drinking whiskey to keep her throat going. She was drinking lemon tea or with ginger. She would sing a little bit. We'd record that, play it back, make sure it was right if she had to fix anything. Anyway, did this all night long. She would, with tape, there's time to roll back and you can collect your thoughts a little bit, or with digital, it just goes boom, 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 boom. There's no break. But so she sang well. She did the whole thing. Brooks Arthur worked with her. I learned so much about how to draw performance out of someone. And then at 6 o'clock, and so we were finished at 6 o'clock. The car came. She got in the car and went to Japan.
My God, man.
And I wrote her, I'd never written a fan letter in my life. I wrote her a fan letter to tell her just how impressed I was and what a great experience and learning for me, and how amazing I thought she was. And I'm honored and privileged to have worked with her. I've
Good
never
for
done
you.
that for anybody else.
Good for
Yeah.
you, man.
But that was a
Where,
long session.
yeah. Nowadays, people take selfies with the artist that will go to a studio, and of course, the internet didn't exist, cell phone didn't exist, but people will. For sure, you have like a big collection of records that were signed by artists, or you were not into that kind of stuff, or you were more
I have a ton
professional.
of records. And
No. But you sign all the time. People nowadays, when I go to every concert, right? I went to see, I don't know, 80s Men Without Hat and Thomas Dolby, and I
mhm.
took pictures with the guy, and they signed a bunch of stuff. And
Yeah.
back in the day, it was common, or
Well, in the studio, there were no cell phones back then, and you did
yeah,
not take pictures. You did not tell
Polaroid.
people what you're working on,
Oh, really?
except
Oh,
within
okay.
the studio. No, that was their
Yeah,
safe haven. You certainly didn't take a copy of anything out and play it for anybody.
yeah,
Digitally now it's so easy to
yeah.
steal that. Back then, and people take pictures all the time. In fact, one of the things that a lot of artists complain about is that they're expected to video the sessions, and that really interferes. Can you hear that?
No, I
Oh,
don't hear
there's
anything.
sirens
I
going
got
off.
it. Yeah,
Okay, sorry. I'll pick it up. Um, there's a thing about the studio being a safe haven for
correct. Yeah,
artists, where they can be themselves, where they can create, where they can be emotional, where they don't have to wear their makeup and
makeup. Yeah,
and all of that. They're creating and they're working on their music. And now, so often for TikTok and for promotion or for whatever, they're constantly filming, and that has an impact on somebody's ability to do what they would do. And I'm not so sure that things some of the music that's being made now, I bet you anything it would be different if cameras weren't rolling,
yeah.
because
I
and some
agree with
people
you.
aren't
Yeah, I agree.
comfortable with that,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
being on camera all the time, and um, creating music is a very emotional thing, and
mm.
they have to be able to feel safe and that they can do that. So I have very few pictures of me in the studio, and if I do, it's because the artist took them.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't have a camera and take pictures of anybody. That just was, you just did not do that, and
Okay.
you shouldn't do it now, because those things still apply to
Yeah.
me.
No. Yeah, but at least at the end of the session when they're done, hey, Johnny Peter Mary, this is the first two records that you did. Can you autograph it for me? That's what I'm saying. Maybe now it's common. Maybe at the time
It's much more common now, and you can
nowadays,
ask
maybe at the
that.
time,
Yeah, I
maybe at the
have.
time.
Well, by the time you got the record,
Yeah,
the record came out and you got it, the artist is long gone. So
they're gone. Of
you
course.
have
Yeah,
to find them to sign it.
yeah.
Uh, so
How you yeah how you manage a session when the ego's musician got in the way? I mean, let's say hypothetically, you are sitting, in as a control room, console in front of you, and behind you there are two people screaming at one another and say, "No, I want the drummer say, I want my drum to sound loud," and the guy who played guitar say, "No, I want this and that," and scream behind you, and of course you represent the studio, right? How you
as an
stay calm?
assistant,
What you do?
yeah, as an
Huh?
assistant, yeah, that's now if I was the engineer, or now I'm the engineer or producer, which is what I do. Those things don't really happen in my sessions, or we work them out. But if I agree to work on a record now, it's because I really like the music and I really like the people, and I've heard them, you know, say I heard them in a club or I heard them somewhere, and I'll go, oh wow, I really love your music, and if you ever want to make a record, let me know. And so eventually maybe they do, and so already, you know, I'm a fan, and that's really important for me and for the band to be able to feel that way about them. Two things I become when I agree to do a record now. I become a member of the band because I am playing the console and I am, you know, so I'm one with them. I'm kind of calling the shots, but it's their record. And so my decision making is based on what I feel they have shared with me or what we have decided. This is how the goal of the record. This is what it's supposed to sound like, or this is what we want to accomplish. So, so they have that trust there because they know that any decision I make is with their best interest at heart. The other thing is I become their biggest fan too, because for that very same reason, any decisions I make is because I like their music so much and I like them and I like the project and all that, that this is a very cool thing to do. And based on what you want your record to sound like, but it's always their record. I'm not going to change, you know, I'm attracted to them and that project because of that music and of what we're going to make. So I'm not going to, you know, do something ridiculous that won't be appropriate because that's not their record, you know, not my record, it's their record. So, you know, as Al Schmidt, the great engineer, would say, this is on the front of that record in big letters is not my name.
Yeah. No, but there's always no. I understand. Yeah, they hire you to produce the best record that could ever be made, the history of the universe. Of course, I'm aware, and they get paid for the studio time. They get paid you, and they studio pay your salary. But still, always they're complicated people, you know, and arrogant
Oh, it's
people.
in
People are screaming, and in any film, my field too, your field too. So
it can happen, and
I
in
I
the
would be
finest of
uncomfortable, you
times.
know.
Yeah. Well, I've worked on mostly as an assistant. Well, as an engineer, there were some projects, but not very many because
Really?
I'm
Oh,
I'm
I'm
a pretty
surprised. Man.
joyous person, and
You're
I
easy
like
to
to
get
have
along
fun
with.
in the
Yeah,
studio, and I like to
yeah.
dance. And so if the music makes me move, then I'm up there and behind the console and I'm dancing. We're having a good time,
All right.
and to the point where the artist will often, you know, when choosing a studio or whatever, they'll say, "Well, I need to be where I can see Lenise because if she's dancing, then I know it's good. If she's not dancing, then there's something wrong." You know, so but see, I'm in a position right now where I can make those choices because earlier on, years ago, when I was an engineer, uh, starting out as, you know, no longer an assistant, and I was an engineer. There were some records that I worked on that I didn't care for the music, I didn't care for the people. Uh, I but the money was great, but I was working for someone else, so I was taking orders from someone else, and I didn't like that. And I vowed anytime I make a record, it'll be with people I like on music I like, and you know that those are the parameters. I have to like the people, and I have to like the music because it's hard enough even with that. And a band deserves to have somebody who's totally into their music. If somebody gives me a demo or something, said, you know, we'd really love it if you'd work on our record, and I listen to it and it's like, it doesn't speak to me or whatever, I'll just say, you know, I'm not the right person for your record. And that's the truth. It doesn't mean it's not good music. It doesn't mean anything except it doesn't speak to me, and they deserve to have somebody working with them where it does speak to them. You know,
Yeah.
I don't work for a record company that assigns me to an artist, and I where you don't relate to the music. You know, that doesn't serve anybody well, I don't think. Nobody has a good time because you're creating this thing. It's like making a baby, you know. It's a very intimate process and very personal, and I'm not a songwriter. I was in orchestra and I was trained in music and all that. I am not a musician on the level that the people I get to work with are. And so I am in awe of anybody who can do that. Mostly write the songs, and the songs that they come up with, it just blows me away. You know, how did you do that? Where'd that come from?
Absolutely.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, I love that part. So they have my complete respect on that level. And so it's a mutual admiration, you know, society when you get into the studio like that, and you want to keep it positive, or you want to keep the emotion that is intended for that record and for that song and whatever to be in place. And it's an emotional process. It should be. If it's not, you know, that's what you want from music. You want the people to have an emotional response when they hear it.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. I don't know. Otherwise, it's not a good match, right? Between you and them, and you don't want to take somebody else's money if you don't like the music, or it's great. Your music is not resonate with me. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can
For
recommend
me,
you Johnny, Peter, and Mary. You know,
yeah.
give them a
It
call.
doesn't feel good to me
Of
to
course.
take their money
Yeah.
if I can't find something about it
That's right. Yeah.
that I enjoy, because I'm bringing me to the project too. Part of me's on there,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
and my energy and my beliefs, and so I want that to be positive. And you know, our lives are only this long. I don't want to spend it being tortured or being
That's right.
bored
No,
or wishing I was doing something else.
that's right. Did you? I read somewhere you participated in another still in another album called Gaucho. Were you there
I
a
did.
little bit?
Yes. Yeah,
And
I
then
did about
you
a
went.
third of it.
Yeah.
I assisted on about a third of it. And
Then you walk
uh
away. Better opportunity.
yeah, and I worked on another record by them, the FM,
Yeah.
that which was for a soundtrack for a movie that I guess didn't go so well, but the song's great. And
Yeah.
but Gaucho, by the time Gaucho came, uh uh I'd already done 10 and a half months with him. And anytime Roger worked on a project with Gary Katz, I would be the assistant, and it would be a long project. And my colleagues were moving up and not being assistants anymore, and they were engineering and all that. And I was still, you know, working with Steely Dan, not which is great. I learned so much, but I felt I had gotten as much out of a Steely Dan experience as I wanted to get. And
Yeah.
so, there was a group in a record that had inspired me to become an engineer, Supertramp's Crime of the Century. When I heard that record, I literally said, I want to make records that sound like this. And I'd never been in the studio. I'd never, nothing yet. This was
Wow.
way before Leon Russell's. I stood up and it came out of my mouth because to me, that was just the most amazing sounding record. So, so when I found out that Supertramp was coming into the village, I had to have that record.
It was
And
Breakfast in America, right?
yes,
My God, man. I mean, how old were you at the time? 24, 25?
I was about 20, let me see, 25. Yeah.
I mean, do you look back in your life one day? And I want to mention 4 albums. Of course, Breakfast in America. The work you did with Steely and with Blondie and
Hmm.
so forth. You were not even 30.
No.
And people will die, I imagine, in your world, in your business, to have one of them. Breakfast. No, I was engineering Breakfast in America. Look at the cover, look at the picture,
Well, I was again, I
and
was the assistant on that one too,
I don't care. You
but
still
I
were.
got to do, I'm singing on it. I got to sing on it.
Yeah, of course.
And,
Yeah.
I got
My
to,
God, man.
uh, you know, a little more hands-on. I had more experience. I was uh, very much included in the recording process, um, and learned a lot as well. And so when I did become an engineer, and I did work on Blondie's AutoAmerican and
Mm,
Rapture and The Tide
yeah,
is High and that whole
yeah,
record, which
yeah.
I'm very proud of and
Of
very
course.
honored and privileged to have worked with Blondie and Debbie Harry and Christine and Clem Burke and, all of them. That was a phenomenal record, from the standpoint that every single song on that record is a different style. And so there's a whole different recording technique for each song. So there were different microphones and, um, different drumming miking techniques and different things to paint a different picture sonically for those songs. That the constant was Debbie Harry's voice, and that there was a band behind it, but she had um, guest performers as well. On the Titus High, we had the best um, percussionists, uh, Ollie Brown, Alex Acuna, and Emil Richards, and they brought all their stuff in. And I was, because I had worked with them before with Steely Dan and being an assistant at the Village and all the projects there at that time. That was the high end of the recording world. At that, I don't think recording has ever been as good since.
I
It's
agree.
different, but it was the the care and quality of recording was so important. People really wanted audiophile quality records that audiophile people would want to listen to on
Yeah.
their $5,000 turntable and anything like that. So we created for them, and my uh, style of music that I liked was very much like yours. That's why I love your radio show.
Thank
Um,
you. Appreciate that.
Progressive rock and early
Yeah.
Genesis and Gentle
Yeah.
Giant, but Rufus and
Yeah.
Boss Skaggs and 10cc and
Yeah.
Supertramp and
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
just
Thank you.
so many, and I've been listening for so long um, that I wanted to make high quality recordings and the best I possibly could. We cared about that. And a lot of people, because anybody can record now, they learn on YouTube and they don't have mentors. They don't learn from the best like I did. I worked, that was kind of my goal for myself was I wanted to work in the best studio on the best music with the best engineers and the best musicians and producers and best equipment. And I did. And that's how I learned. And I assisted for 3 years, which is back then that was a little long. Now people are, some of them never stop assisting, but it's a whole different paradigm now in format because it's so digital and it's done differently. And so people's jobs are different and what they're listening for is different. And streaming formats, each one has a different delivery requirement, meaning, what level how loud is it supposed to be for Spotify and how loud for Tidal and how loud for, Apple Music and all of these different things and metadata and all that was not present back then. You didn't have to concern yourself so much with that. You just wanted to make sure that you had the best sounding microphone in front of the best person, and people had to perform. You couldn't fix them. They had to fix themselves, or they didn't make it into a studio like that without proving that they were worth investing in by a record company to give them a recording budget. So not everybody could make a record. Like today, anybody can make a record, and they do. And that's great on one level because people have a song in them or they have whatever that's in them, and so they can record. It doesn't mean they know how to record well, and it doesn't mean that it's a great song, and it doesn't mean that it's a great performance or arrangement or anything like that, but they can and they do. And so as a result, it's very hard for the real talent to rise to the top and be heard because there is so much music out there and it's not valued, that anybody can do it at any time, and nobody pays for it, so you really can't make a living. And the streaming companies don't pay the artists so they can afford to do it, or afford to do it well. Everybody's always trying to cut corners because they can't afford not to. And maybe some of the records aren't as well recorded as they could if they had a budget and could afford to work with somebody who had experience.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And how many microphone were there on the studio? Like you mentioned, the album Blondie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every track is so different. Therefore, you mentioned, well, the drum needed to be tuned up differently, mics in between, a different type of mic. It's a different type of music. It's a different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that it takes a long period of time to just, before Debbie was singing and memorizing the lyrics or whatever, just set it up. I don't know, a day, 2 days, one afternoon.
Well,
because it wasn't the same setup for all the tracks. There were 12 different albums, if you will, right? All different tracks with different type of the reggae and so
there was an orchestra, so we set up for the orchestra. It's 35-piece orchestra and in one studio, and they wanted an old like film noir sort of sound to it, so it sounds like an old orchestra, for the song AutoAmerican. And then there's like punk songs, and then there's rock songs, and with guitar, one song called T-Birds, which is like one of my favorites, and there's a lot of guitar. They're God, my brain. What is it when feedback? Tons of feedback, and two of the guys singing on it were Flo and Eddie from the Turtles, and who were also been in Frank Zappa's band, and they were great singers. So they're on that, and that's just such a fun song about a roller derby queen, because Debbie always wanted to be that, and so you just feel like it's roller skating. It's so big. Listen to it sometime. It's huge, and listen to it loud. It's just fun, and but also she talks underneath about how the ancient Mayans and Quetzalcoatl and all the back in Mexico, and There's a whole backstory underneath it too, but it's tons of fun, that song. And they yeah, but each one sounded different, and so I'd choose a different mic. I'd put the mic in a different place. I would envision an environment. Like there's a song that's like a 1920s song, Honey Here's Looking at You, and she's having a drink sitting at a bar, and it sounds like a 1920s song. And so we recorded it with that vision in mind. And so it's very creative for me. I was so fortunate to be able to use my technical skills in such a creative way to interpret their vision.
Yeah, and the album, just to mention a couple of tracks, the ties high, and that rapture and follow me, and many other.
Oh yeah,
Man, whatever. You need to write a book, Lenise, man. You gotta start talking. When you
I
start
should.
stop talking to me. You gotta sit down on your computer and.
Well, I just need the luxury of not having anything else going on for X amount of hours in a day, and uh, so I have to arrange for that. And so far, it's like when the people journal or they write down everything, and I've always been one of these people. I'm so busy doing stuff. I have no. I don't know how people journal, because that's time spending writing when I would be, I'm living
Being in a
it, not
session or
writing
recording.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sitting down to write a book will happen. I'm not arranged. My life isn't arranged like that right now because I've got so much stuff going on that I'm doing stuff all the time.
Which is very good. Which is very good. Let's talk a little bit about Supertramp. That particular album on Breakfast in America, man, it's unbelievable. It's one of the I like the band. Of course, I like the band. I like so many bands, but that particular album, it's it resonated with me. It's I don't know,
with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Fortunately, and myself included. I mean,
that's a masterpiece, man. It's not just a great. It's a masterpiece. That's the right way to put it. And you were in the middle.
Timeless. Yeah.
How was the vibe during the session? I think that record, it took like a year to, right? Because at the beginning, I think they kind of all the musicians move in, they need to arrange, they need to be comfy.
Well, they did a lot of pre-production. Some of those songs Roger had written a while before, I think. One of them was written, Take the Long Way Home was brought in later. But they rehearsed, of course they had a studio, rehearsal studio in Burbank called Southcombe that was their management office and also their rehearsal studio where they worked out a lot of the songs. So when they did get into the Village, they had a pretty good idea of what they were going to do, and yet there was still a lot of room for magic. But I worked on that record 7.5 months. They moved into Studio B at the Village, and not just bringing in drums and amps and choosing the right, acoustic piano. They brought in rugs and plants and pictures and lamps and created an environment because they were going to be in there a long time, and they were. And so, and so we would work from about, I think like 10:30 or 11 in the morning till I would take a dinner break at some point and then come back and work into the evening till like 10 o'clock or something, and then often go to the pub in Santa Monica and play darts or on the way home. And so we did that for 7.5 months. There were a few breaks in between, very few. And then they ended up mixing at a different studio. So I wasn't able to be part of the mixing process, which was very disappointing. I was quite devastated that they were leaving, and they tried every way to get funding for me to be the assistant, because I knew where everything was on the tracks and all of that. But I would have had to leave the village, and I would have not had my job anymore. And I wasn't ready for that yet.
Yeah. Wow. Man, Rick Davis and Roy Hodgson. I mean, the two. Sometimes you have one person in a band, that can write and sing, and in that particular case, or Fleetwood Mac, this Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham and so forth. It's sometimes you have one, but having two, people that can write and similar voices in many ways that can. It's unbelievable, man, unbelievable.
Well, it kept the records. That's why they were one of the reasons why their records were so successful, is because there was that diversity. I mean, there were Roger songs with his high-pitched voice, and then there were Rick's heavy piano, kind of darker, kind of, cynical, whatever his songs were about. They had a whole different energy, yet they melded together so well. Roger's incredible guitar player, and just Goodbye Stranger, the guitar playing on Goodbye Stranger when he leaves, I got to get away, that whole outro, Roger playing guitar is just fabulous. I just love hearing it every time I hear it, and that's the key to that album and to the Asia. And what I worked on Gaucho, and I love Gaucho. I can still listen to them, and I like them, and AutoAmerican, all of those records, I love hearing them. And there are some records I've worked on that I don't feel so strongly about. They bring back, a lot of it has to do with what was going on at the time or whatever. And that's the power of music and records. You can't help but go back to where you were sometimes when you first heard them, or those songs definitely remind you. And I'm not one of these people who likes to listen to a classic rock station, because I was there. I recorded a lot of that. I don't need to hear a lot of those again. I appreciate them, but I'm not there. I've moved on musically, and I like new artists, and I like new styles, and I like, discovering new music.
Absolutely. I think Rick Davis was playing the band Ricky and the Rockets.
Ricky and the Rockets.
That band still exists.
Well, he
had
some health issues. He's back east. He's back east in New York. He and his wife Sue, and when Roger left Supertramp, Rick kept the name and toured without him, and made records without him, and had other band members, then Rick had some health issues, and so I think he's gotten better, and he has been performing some. Roger has taken a break now, but he toured. I don't even know if he lived anywhere. He was on the road as the voice of Supertramp for Roger Hodgson, and toured and toured and toured. And so right now he's not touring, and so I don't know what's happening.
I went to his website the other day or last night, to see what it's doing because I like Supertramp, right? I know it's not the same, and but he's not touring. He and 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 Rick Davis, yeah, I knew he had some health issues, but I knew about Rick and the Rocket, and I went to Rick and the Rocket website to see if Rick Davis was playing at least a couple show with them, and he wasn't listed, so it's not.
That was a different Ricky and the Rockets, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the fun thing was when they were touring and they would get off the stage, they were still pumped full of adrenaline, and so quite often wherever they were in the world, they would find a bar or a club or something and come in and as Ricky and the Rockets, and they play Fats Domino songs, and they would play blues and unwind, and they lived in this area of Los Angeles called Topanga Canyon, and there was a club there, I think, called the Corral, and they would play as Ricky and the Rockets there, and people didn't realize it was Supertramp until they got in there.
You know that the record that you participated in as an assistant or as an engineer or the one for always the Supertramp and Fleetwood Mac and Blondie and Steely Dan, they have sold millions of record vinyl CDs, Blu-ray. So if you have earned a penny or 100 of a penny for every record, so you won't be talking to me. You will be sitting in, I don't know, Santa Monica Boulevard
Yeah.
or a mansion in somewhere.
Yeah. Too bad, huh?
Too bad. Yeah. No, but you were part of them, so that you look back and say, "Well, I'm not rich."
I do have that, and
but
I'm great. I'm so grateful. I mean, if you're going to do this for a living, you might as well. If you're lucky enough to work on some of the best records ever recorded, in some people's heads, and there are so many great records recorded, and I got to work on some of them, and then I worked on some records that nobody's even heard about that are quite wonderful. So well recorded and kind of well kept secrets, and that's just the nature of the industry, I guess. But I'm so grateful that the integrity and the quality of recording is still in place. I don't know how to record. I don't know how, some people will say, "Oh, nobody's going to hear that. Nobody's going to hear that." Well, I hear it, and it's there forever. If you let something go that isn't right, and it's on that record, it's on that record forever.
Absolutely.
Every single time it goes by, and everybody else will hear it every single time it goes by, and it's not necessary for that to happen. You just fix it. You have the person play that guitar bit again, or even if they're not in the room, you can, even during tape days, you could copy something to a piece of tape and fly it in, and it would work. Whatever you had to fix, you just figured out a way to do it, and hopefully the artist was still there. And now you can cut and paste and fix all sorts of stuff, and that's really wonderful to be able to do. And
back in the day, you were not. It was a lot harder.
No,
right?
You didn't.
So I'm quite sure you. And the last question, because I know you need to go, but we've been talking for 2 hours. Anytime you go to, I don't know, like a Target supermarket, and you're paying the bill, paying the grocery, whatever, and there's, I don't know, Rapture or the Diet High or Logical Soul or any, and the cashier is singing the track, and you're tempted to tell, that I was involved with that.
Yeah, it's fun to hear those things. Yeah, the first time you hear on the radio something you worked on.
Yeah, man.
Or when it finally gets to the radio and you hear it, because there's different compression and there's different sound things that broadcasters do that also impacts what it sounds like. And so it's a lot of fun to hear them on the radio for the first time.
Well, there. Lenise, thank you very much again. We've been talking for 2 hours, and very grateful for your time.
It's so much fun. It just flew by, flew by.
Yeah, and I have a lot of questions. So when you have the time, we can do a part two and a part three, and then so if you decided to write a book one day, I
Yeah.
can provide the transcript for this. Oh,
Well,
remember that Claudio was asking me about that, and I forgot
yeah,
about that.
right.
That we mentioned,
Sure, sure. Yeah, you never know. That's the thing. I don't know what'll come out. Um,
and I will keep you translated for free to Spanish. How
oh,
about that?
okay.
I'm
All
not
right.
joking. I'm very serious. I will make the time,
Okay.
like
Well,
the other Chilean guy that
hopefully there'll be a budget for that.
yeah.
You deserve to get paid,
Uh,
or whoever does it.
yeah,
I'm big on that. I'm big on that.
yeah.
People have value in their
Well, the
skills.
way the
Have
way you can
value.
pay me if I visit you and in
I'll
Los
show you
Angeles,
some
you can take
studios
me to
and
some recording studios and meet some people
yeah,
and put me in contact with some musicians. That's all. I do what I do
sure.
because I
There's a
told
lot of
before
good
because
clubs
I,
here.
I, I love it. It was very nice talking to you, Denise. Have a good
Wonderful to
afternoon.
talk to you. Thank you
Okay,
so much
well,
for having me.
no problem. Thank you. I will
Oh,
be in
you're
touch very
welcome.
soon. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.
You too. Thank you.